Natasha Thomas was just 13 years old when her world shattered into pieces. That morning had started like any other, mundane, predictable, safe. Her father kissed her forehead before heading out the door, a warm and familiar routine. "See you later, sweetheart," he had said with a tired but genuine smile. She had smiled back, not knowing it would be the last time she'd ever see him alive. Her mother, however, didn't even look up from her phone as he left. Natasha had noticed it, how cold and distant her parents had become with each other. Once upon a time, they were affectionate, always sharing quiet laughter in the kitchen. But now, silence had settled between them like a wall. She had no idea that silence would soon become permanent. That afternoon, everything changed. Natasha was in math class, absent-mindedly doodling in the margins of her notebook, when the intercom crackled to life. "Natasha Thomas, please report to the principal's office." A strange sense of dread crept up her spine. She packed her books slowly, hesitating before standing up. Whispers followed her as she walked through the quiet halls, her heart pounding in her ears. When she reached the office, she saw her mother already there, sitting perfectly composed in a stiff chair. "Your father's gone, Natasha," her mother said in a voice that was eerily calm. Too calm. For a moment, the words didn't register. The room felt too bright, too sharp. Then it hit her all at once, a weight so heavy it crushed the breath from her lungs. "No." Tears spilled from her eyes as a sob tore from her throat. But her mother just sat there, lightly patting her back with a robotic motion, like she was comforting a stranger instead of her own daughter. That night, Natasha lay awake in bed, her grief a tangible, suffocating thing. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their house had thin walls, and she could hear everything. Her mother was on the phone with her best friend, Jane. "Actually, Jane, this might be for the best," her mother whispered, her voice carrying through the silence. Natasha sat up, her breath catching in her throat. "Being a widow sounds better than being divorced. Plus, I get to keep everything without dealing with lawyers." Then, she laughed. She actually laughed. Natasha clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. The betrayal clawed at her insides like a wild animal. She had lost her father, and now, in the most horrifying way, she was losing her mother, too. At the funeral, Aunt Elizabeth, her father's sister, stood apart from the grieving crowd, shaking her head. While everyone else wept and gave their condolences to Natasha's heartbroken mother, Aunt Elizabeth saw the truth. She had always known how poorly Natasha's mother had treated her father. And now, it was all laid bare. It didn't take long for her mother to move on. Just 4 months later, she started inviting a man over for dinner, Peter Smith. He was charming, polite, and brought his 2 children, Hunter and Amelia, along. "Natasha, sweetheart," her mother said one evening, her voice syrupy sweet. "Peter and I have something to tell you." Natasha already knew what was coming. The way her mother sat close to Peter, fingers intertwined, her eyes twinkling like a teenager in love, it was obvious. "We're getting married. Isn't that wonderful? You'll have a new father and siblings." Natasha forced a smile, but inside, she felt sick. "That's great, Mom. Congratulations." Peter smiled at her, but it felt rehearsed, insincere. "Hunter and Amelia are so happy to have a new sister." But Natasha had seen the way they looked at her, like she was nothing. Like she was dirt clinging to the soles of their expensive shoes. After the wedding, Hunter and Amelia moved in and took the best rooms in the house. Even Natasha's childhood playroom was transformed into Amelia's private art studio. When she protested, her mother waved her off. "Don't be selfish, Natasha. We need to make them feel welcome." Her mother, once indifferent, became a doting parent, but only to Hunter and Amelia. She helped Amelia with schoolwork, cheered at Hunter's soccer games, and planned family outings. But Natasha was never invited. "You'll be bored," her mother said dismissively one day as she packed snacks for their weekend getaway. "Besides, someone needs to feed the cat." So Natasha stayed behind. But she wasn't alone. She spent those weekends with Aunt Elizabeth in her small cottage that smelled of cinnamon and old books. And in those moments, she felt more at home than she ever had in her mother's house. "This isn't right, Natasha," Aunt Elizabeth would say as Natasha unpacked her overnight bag for what felt like the 100th time. "A mother shouldn't have favorites." Natasha would shrug, pretending it didn't hurt. "At least I have you." When she turned 17, she dared to dream again. One evening, over dinner, she brought up college. "Mom," she said carefully, "I want to talk about college applications." The room fell silent. Then her mother scoffed, dropping her fork onto her plate. "College? Natasha, we can't afford to send you to college. We have to think about Hunter and Amelia's education." Hunter smirked. Amelia didn't even try to hide her pleased expression. Peter kept eating like the conversation had nothing to do with him. Later that night, Natasha confronted her mother in the kitchen. "What about Dad's money?" she asked, her voice trembling. "He had life insurance, and he saved for years." Her mother's face hardened. "I've used that money to take care of you for the past 5 years," she snapped. "Food, clothes, a roof over your head. Did you think that was free? Stop acting like you deserve everything. You can't just expect things from me." Natasha stood there, stunned into silence. And in that moment, she knew. She wasn't her mother's daughter anymore. She was just an obligation, one that had long since worn out its worth. Her mother's harsh words cut deep, but Natasha knew the truth. Her father had worked tirelessly to save for her future, ensuring that she had a chance at a better life. But now, all that money was gone, spent on building the perfect life for her mother and her new family, while Natasha was left behind, forgotten like an old photograph gathering dust. The betrayal burned inside her, a constant reminder that she was never her mother's priority. That weekend, she arrived at Aunt Elizabeth's house with tear-streaked cheeks and a heart weighed down by grief. They sat at the small wooden kitchen table, the comforting aroma of fresh coffee filling the air as Natasha poured out her pain. She spoke of the dreams her mother had shattered and the hopelessness she felt. Aunt Elizabeth listened in silence, her warm mug cradled between her hands, her wise eyes filled with quiet understanding. When Natasha finally fell silent, her aunt stood up without a word and disappeared into her study. A moment later, the sound of drawers opening and closing echoed through the house before she returned, carrying a thick envelope. "Your father came to see me about 3 weeks before he passed," Aunt Elizabeth said softly, placing the envelope on the table. "He seemed unsettled, like he knew something was coming. He gave me this and made me promise to keep it safe until you were ready for college." Natasha's hands trembled as she reached for the envelope, her breath hitching. Inside, she found a bank statement, a savings account in her name, untouched and growing for years. Aunt Elizabeth was listed as the trustee, ensuring her future remained secure. Tears welled up in Natasha's eyes, but this time, they were not from sadness. They were from gratitude. Even in death, her father was still protecting her. "We can't tell your mother about this," Aunt Elizabeth added. Natasha wiped her eyes and nodded, understanding completely. For the next 3 years, she kept her secret close, focusing on her studies. Hunter and Amelia never missed a chance to mock her. "Hey, Natasha," Hunter would smirk in the hallway. "I heard the diner downtown is hiring dishwashers. Better apply soon." Amelia would chime in with a laugh, "Maybe if you're lucky, they'll let you clean tables too." Their taunts stung, but Natasha stayed silent, knowing that one day, she would prove them all wrong. Graduation day arrived, and before she even had a chance to take off her cap and gown, her mother and Peter called her into the living room. They sat on the couch like judges about to deliver a final verdict. "Natasha," Peter said, his voice firm, "you're 19 now. We've been more than generous, but you need to understand that you can't stay here forever. It's time to get a job and take care of yourself." Natasha smiled calmly, her expression unreadable. "I understand completely. I'll be moved out by next week." They looked taken aback, clearly expecting tears or protest. Her mother opened her mouth, then closed it again, unsure of what to say. "Well, good," Peter finally muttered. "That's very mature of you." Neither of them asked where she would go or how she would manage. They didn't care. They just wanted her gone. Moving day came faster than expected. Natasha packed her life into 3 cardboard boxes and 2 suitcases. It wasn't much, but it was everything she owned. At exactly 10 a.m., Aunt Elizabeth's blue Honda pulled up. Natasha stood by the window, waiting, hoping anyone, would come to say goodbye. But no one did. She caught a glimpse of Amelia peeking through her bedroom curtains, but that was it. No words. No farewell. As they drove away, Natasha watched the house where she had spent her childhood shrink in the side mirror until it was nothing but a memory. But she didn't cry. With every mile that passed, she felt lighter, like she was shedding years of pain and disappointment. That summer, she worked at Sunshine Cafe, serving coffee and sandwiches to kind strangers who actually smiled at her. The owner, Mrs. Walter, was sweet and let her work extra shifts to save money for college. In September, she boarded a plane to West Virginia University, 2 states away from everything she had ever known. She poured herself into her business management program, determined to build a future no one could take from her. Her roommate, Jacqueline, became the first real friend she had made since middle school. When Natasha finally shared her story, Jacqueline simply hugged her and said, "Their loss, girl. It's their loss." Her mother's Instagram was the only window into the life she left behind. There they were, her mother, Peter, Hunter, and Amelia, smiling at soccer games, art shows, and beach vacations. The captions read like advertisements, "So proud of our amazing kids." Nothing better than family time. Natasha was never mentioned. It was as if she had never existed. On holidays, she spent time with Aunt Elizabeth instead. They made their own traditions, cooking together, watching old movies, and filling the cottage with laughter. Sometimes, Aunt Elizabeth caught Natasha looking at her mother's social media and gently took her phone away. "Don't do this to yourself, sweetheart. You're writing your own story now." And she was. Natasha graduated summa cum laude and had job offers lined up before the ceremony. Mr. Gregg, Jacqueline's father, owned a major marketing company and had taken notice of Natasha's talent. "We need smart people like you," he said during her interview. "Your professors speak very highly of you." She started as a junior analyst but didn't stop there. She stayed late, took on extra projects, and studied market trends in her free time. Within 6 years, she had been promoted twice and saved enough for a down payment on her own apartment. The day she signed the papers, she stood in the empty living room, holding the keys, and finally let herself cry. But these weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of triumph. Then, one morning, 8 years after she started at the company, Mr. Gregg called her into his office. "We're creating a new position," he said, handing her a folder. "Senior Director of Strategic Development. The board and I agree you're the right person for it." She opened the folder and nearly gasped. The salary was more than she had ever imagined. Meanwhile, Hunter and Amelia's social media was filled with desperate attempts to appear successful, pictures of Hunter standing next to his old Hyundai with captions like "Living the Dream," or Amelia tagging designer brands she clearly couldn't afford. One post made Natasha laugh, Hunter standing proudly at a local car show, writing, "When hard work pays off. #success #entrepreneur." She read it while sitting in her sleek black Mercedes AMG, worth more than he made in a year. But she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Then, one day, a message popped up on her Instagram. "Natasha, it's your mother. My 56th birthday is next month, and I'm having a party at LeBlanc. I expect you to be there. Don't embarrass me." After 13 years of silence, this was how her mother chose to reach out, no kindness, no apology. Just a demand. Natasha almost deleted the message. But something stopped her. "What are you planning to give her?" Aunt Elizabeth asked that evening over tea. Natasha smirked and pulled up her phone, showing a confirmation email for a luxury vacation package to Australia, first-class flights and 3 weeks at a 7-star resort. Aunt Elizabeth's eyes widened. Natasha, that's too much. She doesn't deserve it. Natasha just smiled. Oh, I know. But can you imagine her face when she realizes what she threw away? Over the past 11 years, Natasha had barely thought about these people, yet here they all were: Aunt Jane, who used to pinch her cheeks way too hard, and Cousin Christina, who never stopped bragging about her kids. A parade of familiar faces from her past filled the room, but none of them had mattered to her in a long time. Her mother looked at her for just a second before forcing a fake smile. Oh, Natasha, you actually came. You could have dressed up a little more for the occasion. Natasha simply took her seat at the far end of the table, watching the evening unfold with quiet detachment. Old Aunt Jane proudly handed her mother a set of scented candles. It's from that nice little shop at the mall, she said, beaming. Her mother gasped dramatically, holding the candles like they were some priceless treasure. Then came Cousin Christina, all smiles as she presented a gift card to a spa. For a relaxing day, she said sweetly. Again, her mother squealed in delight, as if she had just been handed the key to a 5-star resort. The gifts kept coming: a cookbook, a vase, a basket of bath products. Each one was met with exaggerated excitement, over-the-top gratitude, and a carefully rehearsed performance of being the most adored matriarch in the world. Then it was Hunter and Amelia's turn. They stood up together, grinning like they had just won a contest. Mom, Hunter began, and even now, it felt strange hearing him call her that. Amelia and I saved up to get you something really special. Amelia pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward the table. It's a 75-inch smart TV, she announced proudly. We already had it delivered and mounted in your living room. The moment the words left her mouth, their mother burst into tears. She threw her arms around them, sobbing, "My wonderful, generous children. I can't believe this. You must have saved up for so long." Then, finally, all eyes turned to Natasha. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small box, neatly wrapped but simple. She placed it on the table and slid it toward her mother. The room fell silent. Her mother's smile vanished instantly. Her eyes darkened. "What's this supposed to be?" she asked sharply. "Just open it and see," Natasha replied calmly. But she didn't open it. Instead, her face twisted with anger. Her voice turned sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "This is exactly what I expected from you," she snapped. "You show up in that plain dress, probably the only nice thing you own. You take a taxi because you can't even afford a car. And now this? A tiny box? What could possibly be in here? A gift card to McDonald's?" She scoffed and threw the box back at Natasha. It slid across the table, leaving a faint scratch on the cheap wood. Hunter and Amelia giggled behind their hands. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others watched eagerly, enjoying the drama. Peter just kept eating his dessert, completely indifferent. Natasha calmly picked up the box, brushing a few crumbs from the tablecloth where it had landed. She took a deep breath, then looked up, her gaze steady and unshaken. "You know what's funny, Mom," she said, her voice smooth and controlled. "Inside that little box is a receipt for a luxury vacation to Australia. First-class flights. A 7-star resort. Everything included. It's worth $220,000. Her mother's face turned ghostly pale. Amelia dropped her fork with a loud clatter. That's not possible," her mother stammered. "You can't afford something like that. You're lying." Natasha let out a quiet laugh. "You'd know what I can afford if you'd cared about my life even once in the past 13 years, she said. "But since you didn't, let me update you. I'm a senior director at Gregg Marketing Group. I own an apartment in the city. And that taxi you mocked? I took it because I didn't want to leave my Mercedes parked in this neighborhood." Hunter's mouth hung open. Amelia wasn't laughing anymore. And since you clearly don't want anything from me, Natasha continued, slipping the box back into her purse, I won't bother you again. Enjoy the TV. I heard the screen is almost as good as the one in my home theater. She stood up, her heels clicking sharply against the floor in the dead silence that followed. No one dared to speak. The restaurant host called a taxi for her, and she left without looking back. That night, Natasha sat in Aunt Elizabeth's cozy living room, sipping tea as she recounted everything. Some people never change, Aunt Elizabeth said, shaking her head. Your mother has always cared more about looking good than actually being good. They were still talking when Natasha's phone started ringing. It was an unknown number, but she knew exactly who it was. Natasha, sweetheart. Her mother's voice was suddenly sugary sweet. I've been thinking about what happened. Have you? Natasha asked, unimpressed. Yes, her mother said quickly. I realize I may have spoken too soon. If you're still willing to give me that gift, I'd love to accept it. We could use this as a fresh start. I want to be in your life again. We're family. Natasha closed her eyes, finally seeing things clearly. No, she said simply. We're not family. We're just people who share the same DNA. You don't want to fix anything. You just want the vacation. And with that, she hung up. The next morning, she changed the name on the vacation package. Now it's under Elizabeth Thomas, she told her aunt. Aunt Elizabeth's eyes widened. Natasha, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Natasha interrupted with a small smile. You deserve this more than she ever did. You've been more of a mother to me than she ever was. Aunt Elizabeth hugged her tightly, and for the first time in years, Natasha truly felt at home.